Sticking with Gloucester County for a minute and residents leading the way, let's introduce our first guest, Assemblywoman Heather Simmons. Previously served 4 terms as a Gloucester County Commissioner, making her the longest serving female commissioner in Gloucester County history and the first woman to be elected Deputy Director to the Board of Commissioners. So from solid waste to water quality to land preservation and agriculture, she's fought the good fight for South Jersey, and now she's doing it up in Trenton. So let's give a warm TCS welcome to Assemblywoman Heather Simmons. Welcome, Assemblywoman. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Patrick, and thank you for inviting me this evening. And it's so wonderful to see such a packed house on a Tuesday evening in the heat of the summer. And thank you also for the entertainment that you provided before the meeting with the weather forecast and the music, and just a wonderful way. I'm going to keep that in mind for future meetings that I do by Zoom as well. So thank you also for the kind introduction. I did serve several terms on the Gloucester County Board of Commissioners, and a lot of that overseeing agriculture and farmland preservation, open space, water quality management, solid waste advisory committee. So I had a lot of experience working with many of you on this call tonight. I did have a few minutes to kind of scan through and see a couple of the folks who are here this evening. So it's great to be back with you among friends. In Trenton, life is a little bit different in Trenton than it is at home in Gloucester County. In Trenton, I represent most of Gloucester County, all of Salem County, and a chunk of Cumberland County. So about 230,000 residents in 3 of the counties within South Jersey. And of course, at the county level, things are all about operations, plowing the roads, maintaining the bridges, dealing with transactional issues in many cases. But in Trenton, it's all about policy. So a little bit of a shift, and getting to work with people like you throughout the state, but mostly here in the 3rd District and in South Jersey on issues that are really important. And one of those issues, as you well know, is transportation, public transportation specifically. I grew up in Philadelphia. I have lived in Gloucester County for about 32 years, which, seems almost impossible considering I'm only 35 years old. But I know I can't hear you laughing, but I know you're all laughing at that. I moved here to take a job with what was then Gloucester County College. And in my day job today, I am back at Gloucester County College. I've been back at the college, which is now Rowan College of South Jersey, for a few years. And my role is overseeing workforce development and career and technical education. And for my students who are non-credit continuing education, some degree-seeking students, but mostly workforce development, people who are unemployed or underemployed looking for a better opportunity for themselves and their families. One of their big issues is also transportation. And so my legislative partner, Dave Bailey, who in his day job is the CEO of Ranch Hope, a nonprofit in Alloway, a big issue for his students and their families is transportation and the lack of public transportation. And so in the 3rd District, Dave and our Senate partner, John Berzicelli, who lives in Paulsboro and a longtime mayor of Paulsboro before serving 20 years in the Assembly and now in the Senate, the issue is transportation. And so it's a common theme, and it's one that I know you work very hard to address as part of this group. And it's very important to you and your members and the families that you represent for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is its efficiency, its cost, and the fact that it takes cars off the road. So the 3 of us have been talking a lot and advocating a lot through legislation and through other initiatives on a statewide level ways to bring additional transportation options specifically to Gloucester, Salem, and Cumberland counties. And so we decided to bring a little bit of attention to it in kind of a fun way, but also an interesting way. And that was by taking the bus through Salem County. The three of us hopped on a New Jersey Transit bus a couple of Fridays ago and drove from Woodstown to Carneys Point on the bus. And along the way, picked up stakeholders, people that we had spoken to in advance, people who are leaders in the community from Inspira, from major employers like Inspira, PSE&G Nuclear, and Salem Community College, people representing nonprofits, people representing government. We had a few council people and mayors. And at the midpoint of this ride, the bus was full, and it was all full with also passengers, just regular passengers. And we spent some time talking. Well, mostly, I should say, listening. And listening to people about what the struggles are for their clients, for their students, for their community partners, for the families and the communities that they serve on a day-to-day basis because of a lack of transportation options within Salem County. Now, I have to tell you, I wasn't really surprised by most of what I heard, that with only one bus route that's within Salem County, if you don't happen to work or go to school or have to see a doctor or go food shopping somewhere along that route, it's a little bit difficult. In fact, it's almost impossible to get to where you need to go. So that puts a lot of folks at an extreme disadvantage in Salem County. So that was a listening exercise, and we call that the beginning. And we were trying to bring attention statewide to the issue. And clearly, on some level, it worked, because I think that that may have been a little bit of what helped to spark your interest in bringing one of us from the 3rd District here today. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. When I was a county commissioner, we were involved in the creation of the East-West Community Shuttle, something that some of you may be familiar with, for a similar reason. In Gloucester County, as I'm sure most of you know, if you're not trying to travel on a north-south axis, there is no public transportation option, which means that if you live in Williamstown like Patrick does, and you'd like to have a job in the Pure Land Industrial Park, at Amazon, at one of the food manufacturers, at one of the distribution warehouses, those jobs are closed off to you. You can't get there unless you have a car. And so that's workforce inequity defined. And so one of the things that we did was to seek grant funding. In the case of what we were doing at the time was through the Pascal Sykes Foundation, who provided $1 million grant to help create a cross-county shuttle. And it's still active from Avondale to the Pure Land Industrial Park. And once you get to Pure Land, there is a free internal shuttle that will take you to many of the employers, and in fact now will go north to a number of the other industrial parks along the 295 corridor, like Mid-Atlantic and a few of the others. It's $1 each way, by the way, to ride the shuttle, and it doesn't just start in Avondale and end in Pure Land. It makes, I forget honestly how many stops along the way in a number of municipalities, including Monroe Township, Glassboro, where I live, Harrison, Woolwich, and Logan, including the Pure Land Industrial Park. And so it takes you to shopping centers, it takes you to schools, it takes you to doctors' offices, and it takes you to employers. And along the way, we've added stops because of requests from major employers, including Lysios, which happens to be located in Glassboro, their major bakery, rather. Their bakery factory is located on Ellis Mill Road in Glassboro. And they were telling us, this goes back a number of years, hey, we have, at the time, they had about 800 employees. Now they're up to about 1,100. And many of them come to us via public transportation, and it's a pretty long walk to get to us from any stop from New Jersey Transit, or even from, at the time, the Pure Land Shuttle. So we added a stop for them. And there were another number of other examples along the way. So what we demonstrated with that is it can work. That shuttle has a ridership of close to 4,000 per month, which doesn't sound like a lot if you live in Paramus or if you live in Jersey City. But for Gloucester County, those are significant numbers. That grant lapsed earlier this year. And with the help of our Senator, John Berzicelli, myself, and Dave Bailey, we're able to help secure an additional $1 million in state funding to help keep that alive. And what that means is that 4,000 people a month can get to where they need to go inexpensively and reliably. And so we're looking at that model to do micro transportation options for Salem County as well. Dave Bailey secured a grant of $400,000 to do the exploration for micro transportation options for specifically Salem County. Now, early on, the Pascal Sykes Foundation did provide funding for a micro route through Salem County at the same time as Gloucester County was originating the Pure Land Shuttle. And at the time, it just didn't take off. I don't know if it was the wrong route. It wasn't stopping at the right employers. It wasn't quite meeting the needs of the people we were trying to serve. So we're very hopeful with leadership from a number of the employers and nonprofits and educational institutions within Salem County, as well as whatever assistance they need from us. And hopefully from you and folks like you, we can help reinvigorate that as an option. So that's where we are on transportation. I did want to very, very briefly, because I know you have a packed agenda, just talk very briefly about a few of the other initiatives that I've been involved with in Trenton. I am privileged to sit on the Commerce, Economic Development, and Agriculture Committee. In this session, you are probably aware that agriculture has been looped in with commerce and economic development for the first time. And we, on the committee with Bill Spearman from Camden County as the chair, really believe that that is the correct place for agriculture because our farms are small businesses. They need to be viewed as such. They need to qualify for the same loans and grants and opportunities as small businesses, which I'm sure you're aware, in some cases they do, and in other cases they don't, particularly at the federal level. But we're working toward making sure, at least here in New Jersey, they're viewed as small businesses and have the same opportunities and responsibilities as small businesses. So one of the things that I'm working on with the Ag Committee is farmland preservation. So the 3rd District brought in SADC a couple of months ago and talked to them a little bit about farmland preservation struggles for farmers. Specifically, and I'm sure you know this, it's not just a matter of saying, yeah, pay me to stay on this land. These are delicate negotiations, and they often are very, very complex in how they go. And we want farmers to have all the information up front, so that they can make very informed decisions that are in the best interest of them, their families, and their farms. Because one of the challenges with farmland preservation at the state level is that the value that the state has been offering at the end of the day has only topped out at about 55% of the overall value of the farm. Well, I don't know about you, but if a developer is offering me $10 million for a piece of land, but the state is only coming in at 5.5 million. I'm no mathematician, but I can do that math. And that's not an equitable deal, right? So we've been working with SADC and the state on bringing that up much closer to 100%. So that's something that we're still working on. We very much believe in. Having said that, the structure of farmland preservation and how those negotiations work are a complex thing. So what we've done in partnership with SADC is to have a pilot where there is an individual, happens to be a woman, on the ground in Salem County, knocking on doors and talking to farmers about what this really does mean and what it really doesn't mean, and how those negotiations take place. It's a very complex financial structure, and walking them through it to help them make the right decision, again, for themselves, for their families, and for their farm. And so we're very, very pleased. She's got a little truck. She's tooling around. It is hugely successful in Salem County in educating farmers and communities about what farmland preservation means, what it doesn't mean. And we've just been updated by Chuck Rohr at SADC that the program is going so well that now we're beginning to expand it into Gloucester County, specifically starting with areas like Woolwich, Harrison, South Harrison, where there are Mantua, where there are a lot of farms. So we're going to go from there. I also have a couple of pieces of legislation. I have a 4465, and I have to tell you, I'm not experienced enough as a legislator to have all of my bill numbers memorized. I do have some, but not all of them. So if you ever see me on the street and you say, what about Bill A, whatever, whatever, if I give you a confused look, tell me what it's about, because I may not know the number. But A 4465 allows farmers whose land is designated as farmland, but for a number of reasons, and in many cases that reason is age or illness, haven't planted that land. This bill would allow that land to remain in preserved status for longer, right? So rather than automatically withdraw that status from that farm, which happens in a lot of cases, and then the farmer or the family is like, well, wait a minute, we're still using that for farmland purposes. Well, but you haven't planted it in X number of years. So we're trying to slow down, put the brakes a little bit on that process so that mistakes aren't made in how those farms are preserved. And the other one is the New Jersey Loves New Jersey Farmers Act. And this one is interesting. It's a business tax and an income tax credit for farm operators to help compensate for losses in farm products. And so I really like that bill. We do see things like it in other farm communities across the country, and we really want to bring a stronger version of that here to New Jersey. And then another one is a New Jersey Infrastructure Bank Bill, A 5621, which provides an additional $2.4 billion for water infrastructure projects. And what this will fund are clean water and drinking water projects. And that would be through the budget. I know that one of your other interests is in bike safety. And so I did want to mention a bill that I want it to be one of the prime sponsors on, which is 4765. And this one requires driver education and testing on our responsibilities as drivers when we're approaching and passing pedestrians and bicyclists on the road. So obviously, in our communities here in southern New Jersey, where we do have a lot of on-road multi-use trails, this is particularly important. I did want to mention as well the Energy Bill Watch bill, which the governor just signed earlier this summer, and that was one that we in the 3rd District were really proud about. And you know, we all want to make sure that we're looking for ways to reduce our utility bills. This bill or this law now is not one of those bills that's going to reduce your energy bill. But what it does do is provide information. And we all know that information is power. And what it does is it provides to us as ratepayers an update mid-cycle on how much our usage is so that we can make informed decisions about maybe raising the temperature 1 degree or 2 degrees, which can help bring down our usage and thereby bring down our bill. Is that lowering people's bills? I'm hopeful that it gives them at least the information to put them on the path to perhaps bring that bill down a little bit. But what it provides to us, again, as ratepayers, is information. And we believe strongly that that's another tool in the arsenal. I also just signed on to the Code Red bill. It's pretty hot out today. I'm actually down in Cape May County with my family right now, and it was actually 92 degrees on the beach today, which is kind of unusual. Usually when you're right next to the water, it's a little bit cooler. Well, today wasn't one of those days, and it was very still. And the Code Red bill is just like the Code Blue program, which exists in New Jersey that many of you I know are aware of. Code Red says that when the temperature rises to a certain level, that there need to be places available for people to go in to stay cool. Because we all know that these temperatures at this high level are just as dangerous, if not more so, than cold temperatures that we get in the winter. And so that's really important to people. I'm just going to close by saying I didn't grow up here. I grew up in Philadelphia, where there was a lot of public transportation and a lot of services that we don't always have as quick access to here in suburban and rural communities. But when I became employed at Gloucester County College, it was my first real job after college. I was 22 years old when I started at Gloucester County College. I was at the time the youngest employee at the college, and I shared an office with my boss. I was in entry-level public relations, and I shared an office with my boss, who was the oldest employee at the college. And maybe in a different meeting, we can talk about how much you learn when you're singing, Madonna and other 80s songs in the office with a guy who was a newspaper man in the 50s, and how much you learn from that. It was a great experience for me. But at that time, I chose to make South Jersey my home. I believed at the time, and I still do now, 30 odd years later, 34 years later to be exact, that this is where I want to be. And my first home was in Pittman. I've lived in a number of communities. I now live in Glassboro. I've worked at Rowan University over the years. I've owned my own business. I've served as an elected official in a couple of different capacities. And like you, I've made an informed decision to jump in and get involved. And that doesn't mean that I know all the answers. In fact, most of the times it means I don't know any of the answers, because like you, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. So if I had a call to action for you, it would be to help me and Dave and John and the other legislators here in South Jersey, but particularly us, since I'm the one who happens to be sitting here with you this evening, to get bills passed that provide additional transportation options. I would love for you through Patrick or through Sean, or however it is you do this, to help get involved with us in helping to create additional public transportation, to advocate for additional public transportation options for the people of South Jersey. It is critical that people have reliable, less expensive ways to get to work, school, and medical appointments. And even more importantly, it's critical to get cars off the road and to have an eye on the environmental health of South Jersey.